Hi and welcome back to the channel. Following on from my recent video about getting organised in 2025, here is a book review of a very popular book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Obviously, the video is about forming healthy habits for 2025. So some fundamentals about the book, and then we'll go straight into the book summary. So the book was published in 2018. It has 320 pages and 20 chapters. The author is James Clear, as we said. He is an author and public speaker. He has a very successful newsletter with over 400,000 subscribers. I will link the newsletter in the description below. The book has two main sections. I will label them first section as fundamentals of habits, habit formation, and the importance of building small habits over time. And the second part is the 4-step model to building healthy habits, or as James Clear calls them, the 4 laws of behaviour change. So we'll start with the fundamentals. There is 3 main concepts or principles in this section. The first one is driven from the title of the book, Atomic Habits. If you think of it, atoms are the most basic building units of structure of matter. So atoms come together to make molecules, molecules come together to make things. So habits can be used and developed in the same way. Small habits over time can compound and can lead to great achievements. Now, there's an important concept that I'd read about and heard of before called marginal gains. It's essentially about making yourself just a tiny bit better every single day. And that is the first concept described in this section. James Clear brings up examples from British sport, particularly British cycling, and how in the early 2000s, where the sport was at its slowest, through developing and improving with small changes over time, has led to great victories and great successes. The argument here is, if you aim to make yourself 1% better every day for a whole year, you end up 37 times better by the end. Now, one quote from the book: "Success is the product of daily habits, not once in a lifetime transformation." So we're not looking at big bang type changes in your life, we're looking at very small changes that you make every day to improve yourself. So that's the first concept. Second concept is that systems are more important than goals. Now, you're going to question me and you're going to doubt this, and you're going to say, well, goals are important, aren't they? I agree, goals are important, and we need to set goals, as per my previous video that I will link in the description below, about setting goals and knowing where your destination is. But I completely believe in James Clear's point here, in that once you've set your goals, you need to kind of forget about them a little bit. You need to focus on your system, on your process. Because if your focus is purely on your goals, then you're equal to anyone else who could have goals but may not achieve anything. If you focus on your goals, you could get swept away and not really improve yourself in that small incremental fashion that we talked about. You need to set your goals, then focus on your system, focus on how you're going to improve. Systems are more important. Let's say you set your goals and you focus on your system, you will end up achieving those goals whether you thought about them too much or not. However, if you set your goals and focus on nothing else but your goals, you will probably get lost, because vague goals lead to no achievements. Another quote from the book: "It's not about any single accomplishment, it's about the cycle of endless refinement and continuous improvement." So if you show up every day and improve yourself and focus on your system and focus on the parts that make up your habits and development, then you will reach your goals. Third and final concept in this section is habits and identity. The argument here is that we are often focusing on the wrong thing when it comes to building new habits or breaking bad old habits. It's because we focus on the outer shell of the model of behavioural change that James Clear has discussed here. So that model is made of 3 layers. The innermost layer is your identity, followed by your processes or systems, followed by your habits or outcomes. We try and change our habits by focusing on the outcomes, the outermost layer of the model. However, what we need to change is our identity. James Clear's message here is that identity influences habits, but also habits influence identity. So instead of saying I want to run 5k a day, you want to focus about being a runner, and the running regularly will come, but you need to focus on the identity. Equally, when you build your habits and you start to run regularly and you focus on your system, then these regular habits and this persistence and this commitment will feed your identity, and you will believe that you are a runner. Another quote from the book, it says, "It's one thing to say I am that type of person who wants this, but it's something very different to say that I am the type of person who is this." So that's the first section. Next section is the 4 laws of behavioural change, or the 4-step model to building new habits. The 4 steps or the 4 laws are: 1. Make it obvious. 2. Make it attractive. 3. Make it easy. And 4. Make it satisfying. You will notice that as we discuss the 4 different steps or laws, that there are some common themes between them, so they kind of link to each other. So don't feel that it's repetition, it is more of a connection. So we'll start with make it obvious. You have to build your habit into your routine. So instead of being vague and saying that you want to do something full stop, you want to create something called an implementation intention. And an implementation intention is essentially a statement or a declaration on your part that you're going to do the habit or the routine or the behavior at a certain point in a certain place, so that there is a framework for you to follow the routine or the behavior. So as an example, instead of saying I want to learn Spanish, you should say I want to study Spanish for 20 minutes every evening at 6 o'clock. Now you are making your intention clear, and you've created an implementation intention rather than just an intention. In terms of making things obvious, you need to have your friction at its lowest. Now, friction is a very popular term. You'll find that it's been bounced around a lot on YouTube and in books. It's essentially anything that stands in the way of your development and of your new habits. So, for example, having to look for your running gear every day at 5 o'clock in the morning is friction. If you have it ready from the night before, that eliminates the friction. That eliminates any steps that could potentially be hazardous, and that you could lose your motivation and you could give up. So going back to the learning Spanish example, you should have your Spanish study book in your study or in the room you plan to read it every evening, so that it's ready, it's in front of you, you have no choice but to read it. Reducing friction means that we have to organize or reorganize our environment. So having the things that we need accessible to us is quite important, and that is part of making it obvious. So if you want to, for example, eat more healthily and eat more fruits, you have to have your fruit out on your table or right in front of you as you open the fridge, so that you can eat fruit and make it more obvious and more accessible. A final point in making it obvious is something called habit stacking, and that's based on a well-known effect called the Diderot effect, and that essentially is all about a kind of ripple effect of a certain action. So for example, if you buy a phone, you're bound to think about buying a screen protector, buying a case, and maybe subscribing to some apps or getting phone insurance. So a certain action is never done in isolation, and there are some actions associated with it. So the easiest way to build up a new habit is to associate it with something that's already happening. So for example, you could say, when I make my morning coffee, I will do some meditation, or just before I go to bed, I will do some journaling. So attaching your habit to something that is already part of your daily routine is a way to never forget it and a way to keep doing it in the long term. Second law is making it attractive. So there is an interesting principle here called temptation bundling. So this concept is very similar to the habit stacking principle, but instead of just linking your new behavior to something that is just part of your routine to something that is actually desirable. So for example, you could say that if you do your revision every day and finish your homework, you are going to read a book that you like that is not related to your studies. If you're trying to become financially more savvy or control your spending, you could say that if I save £10 a week for a month, I'll buy myself a Costa coffee at the end of the month. So it's all customizable and it could all be related to your personal circumstances, but the concept is that you're trying to build something healthy, you're trying to do something that is going to aid your development as a person, so you then attach it to something that is attractive to you or something that you like doing. Next to that is using your support networks to help encourage you build those new habits. Essentially what that means is making sure that all your social cues are all in line and in keeping with your commitment to new habits and healthy habits. So for example, if you're trying to quit smoking, sitting in the middle of a group of smokers every day is not going to help you. Equally, joining a group of people that would encourage you and build you up and help you achieve your goals and build up your habits is certainly a good thing. So that's important to take into consideration the impact of our support networks and our society and the groups we belong to. A quote from the book is, "Join a culture where 1. Your desired behaviour is the normal behaviour, and 2. You already have something in common with the group." Next is make it easy. There is a few principles here in making a habit easy. First of all is repetition. Now, we all know that repetition helps us to learn things, helps us develop, and certainly what repetition does is helps you cross something called the habit line. So you are transitioning from doing this habit consciously to becoming an automatic or a natural thing. And as you do that, you're constantly improving over time. The next principle is the 2-minute rule. It is a way of breaking down your new habits into small building blocks that you can over time combine into your habits, into your systems, and finally into your achievements. So let's take the example of running again. So if you want to develop a daily habit of running a certain number of miles or kilometers, what you could do is you could break it down into 2-minute activities, and you can maybe focus on the first 2-minute activity, which is getting your running gear and shoes on. So if you develop the habit of doing that, that is a starting point. Another example, if you want to develop a reading habit, you could say, I will read 1 page a day. Now, to many of us, maybe 1 page is very little and it might not be very exciting, but actually the best thing to do when you're developing new habits is to avoid exciting, because exciting dies down quickly. But what you want is something small, and as you develop, this will increase. The 1 page will be 2, the 2 will be 10, and you will reach higher levels of commitment to your new habits. Now the next 2 principles are focused on reducing future friction. So we talked about friction, about reorganizing our environment to control and reduce present friction, but the next 2 principles are focused on friction in the future. So you're creating a rule or making a decision or committing to something today that will help you in the future. So first is something called commitment devices, and these are not physical devices. These are rules that you make for yourself, commitments on your part. So for example, you could say, I'm going to start revising for my exams, and as I'm doing that, I'm going to sign out of all my social media accounts until I finish my exams. So you've made that decision today, but is that going to affect your habit and your routines and your behaviors for the next few months until your exams are due? So commitment devices is a commitment you make today but will impact the future and will help reduce future friction. The next one is automations, and again it's something that you set today or build today to help reduce future friction. Now there's multiple examples of automations today, some are useful, some are not, but a simple example is setting a notification from your bank will help you control your spending if that's a habit that you want to develop. Now you don't have to think about looking at your statement, you will just get a notification and that will reduce future friction. Finally, make it satisfying. A nice quote from the book, it says, "What is rewarded is repeated and what is punished is avoided." So obviously this can work both ways in terms of developing good habits and breaking old bad habits. Now the first 3 laws of behavioral change, or the first 3 steps, are focused on starting a good habit. This one is focusing on continuing or persisting with a good habit. The point of this is to try and develop something that is enjoyable. So make your habits enjoyable, satisfying, so that there is an element of instant gratification that helps you keep going with your habit even when the goings are tough, even when we're not fully motivated. Now, of course, our focus is on delayed gratification, but an element of instant gratification with our new habits to keep them going is useful. So, for example, if you're trying to write something, write an essay or write a book, or you want to become a writer, you could focus on having a shiny desk setup, something that helps you and makes the whole experience satisfying. Now there's that example, but it could be applied to anything that you're trying to build or achieve. Final 3 points, just building on all what we've said, and it's all from the book as well, to help keep track of your habits. Surprise, surprise, there's something called habit trackers. So habit trackers is multiple versions and editions and types. There's ones that you can find online, there is electronic versions, there is paper versions. You can make your own in bullet journals, for example, but the whole point is that you stay in control and you stay aware of your progress. Now, one thing that James Clear tries to emphasize is, if you could, try not to break your streak more than once. So yes, you can forget one day, or you could struggle one day to follow your routine or behavior or habit, but try not to make it twice in a row, and try not to break your streak. The next point is having an accountability partner, and that's something you trust, either a friend or family, that will hold you accountable to your commitments. That will create some useful and healthy friction. So because you know you're going to own up in front of someone you trust and someone you know, then you will definitely think twice before skipping your habit. And finally, review and reflect. So don't slip into senseless routine repetition of something that you may not be benefiting from, or something that you initially benefited from but needs tweaking to continue to benefit from. So you need to sit with yourself either once a month, once every 6 months, once a year, to review and reflect and make changes as you feel is needed. And certainly having a habit tracker in the first place will help you keep track of that and help feed into your review and reflect sessions to help keep your good habits going. I hope you found this video useful, and if you have, please do subscribe so that you can receive future similar videos, and I will see you in the next one.